getting to be a big place, you know, and you've got the mountain on one side and the beach on the other. I don't think they can make wide interstate. I don't know what you sit in the traffic.
And they're still early on because they'll throw out Chattanooga and then they'll say Denver. Go to Chattanooga. You see that?
Good morning. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the January 9th, 2025 meeting of the Memphis and Shelby County Land Use Control Board. My name is Mary W. Sharp, and I will be serving as your chairperson today. We will begin this morning's meeting with a roll call. Mr. Ragsdale, would you proceed, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. Mr. Winter?
Present.
Mr. Tolles?
Here.
Mr. Thomas?
Present.
Mr. McKinnon?
Aki.
Mr. Gill?
Here.
Ms. Wilbanks?
Here.
Vice Chair Lyles Wallace? Here. And Chair Sharp.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Ragsdale.
But you made it.
I would like to remind you that copies of today's agenda are located at the front right podium if you need them. If you wish to be a speaker on any case that is on today's agenda, please fill out an attendant speaker's card located at the front podiums. Once you have filled out the card, please bring it up front and hand it to one of our DPD staff members located at the left podium. When that agenda item is called, you will be given the opportunity to speak. At this point, I would like to read our conflict of interest statement. The adopted policy of the Land Use Control Board requires that any member of the board recuse himself or herself from any participation in the discussion or voting on any matter at the meeting's agenda in which he or she may have direct or indirect personal interest. The member shall vacate his or her seat during deliberation on any matter from which they have recused themselves. An abstention may substitute for recusal for the purpose of maintaining the quorum. I would like to now get approval of our minutes from the last meeting. May I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I assume we're ready to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All against, nay. Motion carries. Mr. Ragsdale, may I please get a secretary's report for this month and an explanation of today's procedures?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have a secretary's report, so I'll go into the procedures. At the beginning of today's meeting, we will establish a consent agenda for those items where no one in the audience or on the board is requesting an individual public hearing. After the consent agenda is established and approved, we will move on to the regular agenda. For each case on the regular agenda, the DPD planner will give a presentation. This will be followed by the applicant's presentation and any testimony from others who support the application. The applicant and supporters will be given a total of 10 minutes. Following each speaker, the chair will ask the board members if they have any questions for that speaker. Next, the opposition will be given a total of 10 minutes to present their case. Following each speaker, the chair will ask the board members if they have any questions for that speaker. Finally, the applicant will then have a 3-minute rebuttal period under the same rules. Following all the presentations and after all parties have been heard, the chair will ask if the board members have any additional questions from anyone who spoke. Then the chair will close the public hearing portion of the case, entertain a motion on the matter, discuss, and then vote on the application. If an applicant or any speaker would like to be heard after the conclusion of the public hearing portion of the case, or if a board member wishes to hear any additional testimony from any party for additional clarification, a motion will need to be made along with a second and then a 2/3 affirmative vote of the board is required to reopen the public hearing portion of the agenda item. If the public hearing is reopened, both the applicant and opposition will be allowed an equal amount of time to provide additional testimony. After the additional comments, the board will close the public hearing portion of the case and deliberate and then take a final vote. Again, if any member of the audience wishes to provide testimony in support of or in opposition to a case, he or she will need to fill out a speaker's card. These are available at the front podium. Speaker's cards are not required of applicants since their names are already part of the record.
Thank you, Mr. Ragsdale. Before we go any further, I'd like to announce happy birthday to several of our board members, Mr. Thomas, Mr. Tolles, and yours truly. Thank you very much. Mr. Thomas on the 7th, Mr. Tolles on the 4th, and mine is on the 28th. Okay. Thank you again, Mr. Ragsdale. The board is supportive of community involvement, and we welcome neighborhood comments and feedback. We are very respectful of the fact that many of you have taken off work or adjusted your schedules to be here today, but we ask that your comments please be made within the time frame allowed. If there are multiple speakers, please try not to be repetitive so as to make the most out of your side's 10-minute time allotment. Lastly, I'd like to ask you to silence your cell phones so as not to interrupt or disturb anyone during today's proceeding. I would like to now move to the consent agenda. With our procedures now explained, I would like to introduce to my right Ms. Lisa Wilbanks, who will be this morning's consent agenda chairperson. Ms. Wilbanks will read items 1 through 15 as a consent agenda. Once the consent agenda is read, if you wish to discuss one of those items individually, please come forward and give us the item number, and we will pull that case. We will then vote on the remaining consent agenda items as one vote, and following the vote, we will hear the cases that were pulled individually. Ms. Wilbanks, would you please proceed?
Yes, ma'am. Item number 1, case SUP 2024-037 in North Memphis. The request is a special use permit to allow used car sales located at 2554 North Watkins Street. Staff recommendation is hold for 1 month. Item number 2, case SUP 2024-041 in South Memphis. The request is a special use permit to allow vehicle service in Goldsmiths Regional Shopping Center, CP, located at 0 Elvis Presley Boulevard. Staff recommendation is hold for 1 month. Item number 4, case MJR 2024-051 in Parkway Village. The request is a major modification to allow setback encroachments in individual lots within the Fox Meadows Business Center PD located at 5400 Knight Arnold. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item number 5, case S 2024-041 in the University area. The request is a 2-lot residential major subdivision located at 4014 Grandview Avenue. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions and waivers. Item number 6, case MJR 2024-052 CO in unincorporated Shelby County. The request is a major modification to allow more housing options for existing apartments located at 7435 Goodlet Farms Parkway. Staff recommendation is approval. Item number 8, case RC 2024-003 in Whitehaven. The request is a deletion of the residential corridor overlay located at and around the east side of Elvis Presley Boulevard, north of Whitehaven Lane. Staff recommendation is hold. Item number 9, case SAC 2024-007 in North Memphis. The request is the physical street closure of approximately 196 feet of Mahana Avenue between Fred Street and Minnie Street, located at 400 Mahana Avenue. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item number 10, case SAC 2024-008 in North Memphis. The request is a physical street closure of approximately 302 feet of Minnie Street, north of Mahana Avenue, located at 400 Mahana Avenue. The staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item number 11, case SAC 2024-009 in South Memphis. The request is a physical closure of approximately 712 feet of a paper alley located west and to the south of 1043 South 3rd Street. Staff recommendation is hold for 1 month. Item number 12, case SUP 2024-048 in Frazier. The request is a special use permit to allow a multifamily quadplex located at 0 Hawkins Mill Road, just east of Overton Crossing Street. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item number 15, case Z 2024-012 in South Memphis. The request is a rezoning of approximately 1.95 acres from CMU 1 to EMP, located at 1051 South 3rd Street. Staff recommendation is hold for 1 month. That is our consent agenda.
Thank you. Are we still hearing 3? Or is it on?
It's pulled. No. Full hearing. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Wilbanks. Anyone now wishing to pull a case from the consent agenda, please come forward and give us that item number. So we have pulled items number 3, 7, 13, and 14. The items on the consent agenda will now be voted on.
Is that correct, Brett?
No. And 5?
Not on the consent.
That's correct, yeah, 5 is to be heard as well.
Okay,
Number 5 will be heard.
yeah.
Okay, number 3, 5, 7, 13, and 14 will be heard. The items on the consent agenda will now be voted on with one vote, subject to the recommendations of DPD. If the consent agenda is approved, only item number 3, 5, 7, 13, and 14 will be heard.
Please show me recused from 12, item 12.
Pardon?
Recused from item 12.
Thank you. Okay. By voting on the consent agenda, each board member is affirming that he or she has read the staff report and agrees with its findings and, where applicable, its recommended conditions. Can I get a motion, please?
Yes, ma'am. Move to approve item number 1, case SUP 2024-037 as a whole. Item number 2, case SUP 2024-041 as a whole. Item number 4, case MJR 2024-051. Item number 6, case MJR 2024-052CO. Item number 8, case RC 2024-003 as a whole. Item number 9, case SAC 2024-007. Item number 10, case SAC 2024-008. Item number 11, case SAC 2024-009 as a whole. Item number 12, case SUP 2024-048. And item number 15, case Z 2024-012 as a whole.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. Is there any discussion amongst our board members? Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, I assume we're all ready to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. We will now go to the regular agenda chair, Mr. Brown Gill.
Item number 3, MJR 2024-049, CO, unincorporated Shelby County, site plan review for a multifamily development with Cordova Club PD located at 0 Appling Road.
Okay, is the applicant present? Would you come forward and introduce yourself? Please, name and address.
Good morning, Roy Lamica, 11213 Goat Drive, 38002.
Okay, thank you. We do have opposition, so we're going to hear the case.
Good morning. I'm Alexis Longstreet with the DPD. I'll be presenting on case number MJR 2024-049. This is a request for a site plan review for a multifamily development within the Cordova Club PD of 1995. This property is located in unincorporated Shelby County. As you all can see, there's a vicinity map that includes the neighboring subdivision that was also included in the 1995 Cordova Club PD. This property is currently zoned CA, but within the PD, it did have a original designation of RML, which is now RU3, surrounded by other single-family uses and as well as institutional, being a church neighboring next door. This property is currently vacant. So here I have included the recorded outline plan. And this is noted in the staff report as well. The outline plan conditions never explicitly address parcel 3 uses permitted until the re-recording of 1992. The outline plan identified, as I mentioned earlier, that specific parcel as RML, which is residential multi-dwelling, which is our current zoning district of RU3, which permits the multifamily residential use by right. Here is the proposed site plan by the applicant. They are proposing the 3-story structure, and there have been some changes. I will mention this as well ahead of time that the applicant will speak to regarding conditions number 6 and 7. Those conditions can be found on page 16 of the staff report. And staff is recommending approval with conditions. As mentioned earlier, the opposition is the main reason why this case has been heard today. That concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions of her at this point? Okay, hearing none, we're ready for your presentation from the applicant.
Good morning again. So the plan is, our intent is to develop a multifamily apartment complex on this site with approximately 36 units. The site's roughly 3 acres, and according to the PD, we are allowed 12 units per acre. The plan is to develop a building along Appling Road, which will face Appling Road with the front, the parking lot behind it. We're proposing 1.5 parking spaces per unit, which is per UDC. We'll have stormwater detention in the rear corner. We are abutting single-family houses on the eastern edge. And to speak to the conditions that were made, we have read the conditions in the staff report. We also met with the neighbors as well this week to discuss several items that they wanted to voice their concerns about. We did come to a couple of agreements between the parties. One of those is again on condition 6, which is the height of the building. We came to an agreement that we would limit the height of the building to 2 stories. That was one we did. We did come to agreement on that 2-story maximum on the building. And then on number 7, the Crystal Lake Drive being public, that was a very big point for the neighborhood as well. They wanted to delete that condition 7 for a public street to connect through. And the new condition would just be that this parcel would be allowed 1 driveway cut for a private drive on Appling Road, not a public road going through. So those are the 2 conditions we wanted to change in the report.
Okay, that's your,
Yes, ma'am.
okay, thank you. We'll now hear from the opposition. Okay, if you can come and give us your name and address.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Casey Shannon, 1468 Fenton Avenue, Memphis, Tennessee, 38104. I am counsel to Cordova Club Owners Association. Several of or at least a couple of the residents want to speak on this. I wanted to go over just briefly the basis for the opposition as we have set forth in the opposition letter that y'all have. We would respectfully disagree with the applicant and DPD on whether this development is permitted. If you look at the outline plan conditions, they specifically allow multifamily dwelling units only in office parcels 1 and 2, and commercial parcel 1 and R-ML parcels 1 and 2. That's very much omitted from that is the parcel 3, which is what this parcel is designated on the outline plan conditions. It is never contemplated in the original plans for this to be a multifamily residential space. Additionally, and the residents will speak more on this, we believe this is far afield of what is permitted generally under the UDC. This is not going to be compatible with the surrounding uses whatsoever. There are significant concerns as to safety, as to overflow parking. As we talked about, there's only 1.5 that they're asking for, and everybody knows there's going to be significantly more traffic than the 1.5 contemplates, and there's no place for those cars to go unless they're trespassing onto Cordova Club Owners Association land or directly south of Parcel 3, the Memphis Church's land and parking lot. I'll speak briefly. There's only one other apartment complex in the general area that is 28 acres. It is, and right on 2 arterial roads. This is a tiny apartment and a tiny parcel shoehorned in. You can see it's encroaching on the required setbacks if you look at the plan submitted. We would assert that this is not at all proper for this space. And then as Mr. Micah mentioned, we did have a meeting, and so if this is to be approved, which we don't think it should be, there are the changes that he mentioned that that we would need to see, which is not making that a Crystal Lake Drive that connects to the private Crystal Lake. It should be just an access solely to, and that does not abut to the private Crystal Lake Drive, and a limit of 2 stories. Additionally, we would like to see any final plat, if this is approved, submitted for review and comment by the Cordova Club Owners Association and and all other abutting landowners for review and comment before final administrative review and approval. With that, I will defer to the residents, and specifically Laverne Crouch, the president of the Cordova Club Owners Association.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Crouch, could you give us your name and address, please?
Madam Chair, I don't believe, okay. Yeah, so we got your name and address on the regular. We didn't have a card for you, but yeah. Okay.
What was that? Okay. I'm Laverne Crouch. I live at 1314 Winter Springs Lane, which is inside the area that this backs up to called Crystal Lakes. And thanks to a lot of help from you guys and from our attorneys, we do understand that this is now eligible to be an apartment complex area. However, it was never intended to house an apartment complex. And if you get more detailed about what the land really looks like, as opposed to the plat map, you can see some of this. I'd like to tell you a little bit about us. We are right here, and that's not all of us, but there are 4 different neighborhood associations and owners that are very concerned about this. We had 17 people at a meeting on Tuesday night when the weather was freezing, who are more than concerned about this particular piece of property that's less than 3 acres, who's had drainage problems for years, which is why the builders did not put anything there. They could not figure out how to do anything with that property without major overhaul of the water drainage, parking, so forth and so on. So let me tell you a little bit about us, okay? I'm going to do Cordova Club first, but Chipping Camden is also across the street on the other side. It's a 30-acre, it's not shown on this one, but it's across Appling. It's a 30-acre or 38-unit small individual housing project that was put in. The developers did about 1/8 of a mile from that 3 acres is an apartment complex that was put in by the developers. It's large, it's got places for people to play and do things together. It's gated. It has a really good perimeter fencing around it, and it's big enough to hold overflow parking of 65 units more than what was required. So it also dumps or puts people into the arterial roads of Appling Road, a large road, and Cordova Road, a large road, where this 3 acres is going to put people, they are going to travel down Appling about, I think it was 75 yards, make a left. They're going to turn on Cordova Club Drive, which is a residential area that already has a lot of speeding on it and driveways that dump right, or that intersect with the Cordova Club Road. So we've already had 3 accidents out there last year. That's not your all's issue, but it is a situation that is developing and getting worse that Shelby County will have to deal with or help us deal with. So let's talk about who we are. Cordova Club is 600 owners, 600 properties. within this particular development. We were developed about 30 years ago. We've been around a long time. We have 9 distinct areas that are different. Most of them were around the old golf course that was put in, but some of them were built around lakes and things of that nature. We have an infrastructure that was left for us by the developers that allows us to monitor ourselves, which means that, and I passed out a sheet of paper that I hope you guys got that's got some dots on it, but we track crime in our area every year. In fact, we've been doing that since 2014. And what we have found consistently is that Cordova Club and our residential areas are the very safest place to live in that whole area. And we're in the middle of Cordova. So if you look at the dots and you look at where they occur as it relates to non-personal crime, we are a good choice to help Memphis and Shelby County defeat crime. And we all know that's a major goal of both of those entities. We want to encourage you to think about the overall general good of Cordova and of City of Memphis, and to think about retaining that as a single-family residential area. Now, I do understand that there is a caveat in there where they could put in a multi-family complex, but we don't think that's in the best interest of the city, the county, or the new residents who are going to live there, because he could build small family housing and get more in, and it would still be within our help to maintain safety in that area. Now, if...
Madam Chair, the opposition has a minute left.
Oh,
Okay,
Lord.
you have 1 minute left.
Okay, real fast. Okay, if we can't do that, could we please consider requiring the following? And he's already said he would do 2 floors. That's good. That helps us. Totally encasing that 3 acres with commercial perimeter fencing that keeps people from walking in off of the golf course, coming in from the church, coming in or going out. So it allows a safety feature to make sure that we have additional cameras required to be installed and gates that we can secure that area so that they can monitor who goes in and comes out. That is very important for that area. Trash. This is a big deal. Right now, we are fighting tooth and nail to keep trash off of our streets. And we don't think there's going to be enough room up there to keep it away from the private drive that they've agreed to put in. We need it put towards the back as a condition so that it's not running around Appling and Cordova. We do pick up trash every week, and we pay for that. And a lot of that comes from the apartment complex that is about a third of a mile from there, the Appling Lakes Apartments.
Okay, your time is up.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. But do we have any questions of Ms. Crouch at this time? Any of the board members have any questions of Ms. Crouch? Okay, we're ready for the opposition to...
Hey, Mary, could I do one thing? I'd like to have everyone that's here representing opposition stand up real quick.
Okay, thank you.
I just
All right.
wanted you to know.
Thank you. Okay, we now have the applicant giving your rebuttal. I think you have a little bit more than 3 minutes. Okay, you have 8 minutes to
Madam
rebuttal.
Chair, before the applicant has his rebuttal, I just wanted to clarify for the board what is before you today. I know that there's been a lot of discussion about the use, and we have discussed this with the opposition multiple times. The use is not before you today. It is a by right use that we have researched very clearly, and Mr. Saliba beside me has. So today before you is the site plan review only, and so that's what I would encourage you to look at and review and take the comments and what you might want to do about the site plan. But the use is by right and not before the board today.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to comment on that as well. According to the original plat, this property is labeled as R-ML, which does relate to the RU3 use and zoning, which does allow apartments by right. So just want to point that out. Also wanted to point out, to back that up, the property to the northwest, which is that large apartment complex, on the PD was also labeled R-ML. So those are both the same labels on the original PD. And that property there has roughly 18 apartment buildings with around 300 units probably in that entire complex. We're only asking for 36 units here. It's a much smaller property. And you can see the size and shape of this property does not really give you many options to develop it. That's probably why it's still not developed today, because it is a very odd-shaped triangle. Trying to fit houses in there just doesn't really work. So to try and get that return on your investment, it does require you to go vertical into an apartment-style building, 2 stories is our agreement, to go 2 stories on that building. But this is a sort of a weird-shaped property, so we're trying to do our best we can with keeping it, looking nice. The fencing will be there as well. We'll have security for our own facility. We'll try and put a gate in. With that road not being public, it helps us do a gate as well on the driveway. A public road would not allow a gate, so being a private drive does also help us provide that security with the gates. We can move the trash into the rear of the property. It will go closer to the houses, but that's an option we have to look at. Also on the overflow parking, that was a choice that was made in our meeting. The choice was you could reduce the building footprint and go higher to maybe 3 stories. That would give you more additional room for parking. The problem is if we keep it 2 stories, the building footprint is much larger to get those units in, which limits the amount of room you have left over for parking. So we're trying to get our best we can with the parking numbers. Again, we're doing what's required by code, UDC, to get that in there at 1.5. But we did have a trade-off there with the building height being lowered. It does reduce the amount of room you have left over for parking. So we're meeting code, but we're not going the extra for the overflow that they mentioned earlier. So,
Okay, thank you.
thank you very much.
Do we have any questions of the applicant?
I have a question for the applicant. Have you done any elevations, any materiality for this? Do you know what this is going to look like?
We haven't yet on this. We're just in a very, very early stage on that, trying to figure out if we can get this through first, and we could move into that stage as well.
Okay. And just quickly, what kind of per square foot rates on a monthly basis do you think you performing?
Good question. We looked at around the 1,400 to 1,500, potentially could be more, depending on the cost of the construction. That would be a very big part of the cost analysis of what this might cost to build. Again, that 2 to 3 stories does impact that, and the number of parking spaces impacts that as well. So it's kind of a give and take to figure out what you got. But our starting point was around the 1,500, was just kind of our guess. And
is that around $1.50? I'm sorry, I didn't hear your size.
So the use themselves, looking at around 1,000 maybe per unit, square feet per unit, depending on the number of bedrooms. It could be a little less than that depending on, because you've got, we're currently showing about 20,000 square feet for that ground floor unit, which you could fit 16 units ground floor, and then second floor also 16 units, which would be 32. You could do a little more than that if you can squeeze those in. That was the very preliminary idea we had, and just guessing what we might could fit in there.
So where do you think you'll be on rate?
Not real sure on the rate. Yeah, looking maybe, again, $1,500 a month.
Okay.
potentially.
For 1,000 feet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Roughly in that general range. Could be a little less than that again, on the room size.
Okay.
Just a guess off the top of our heads for now. Sure.
And Mr. Winters?
Do you know the unit mix yet of the number of bedrooms?
Mostly be single, one-bedroom units.
Okay.
Could be some two in there as well, mixed in. Was going to mix it up some, but mostly one bedroom.
No 3-bedroom?
I don't believe so. Okay, 2 3-bedrooms.
Okay.
Sorry, that was the thought.
Okay. Where I was headed with it is just looking at the parking amount. Because as you increase the number of bedrooms, it's better to have one parking place per bedroom as opposed to 1.5 per unit, especially as you start to introduce larger bedroom units. So I would be a little bit worried about the number of parking spaces here if you're going to introduce 3-bedroom units. And I also wanted to ask, you mentioned the trash. You said moving it north. Where it's not represented on the site plan, so I wanted to inquire where that might go. And then while I've got that question out there, also you mentioned if you don't do the public street, you'd ask for a curb cut on Appling. Where would you be able to do that? Because you're starting to jam a lot of stuff, the trash, the curb cut, and parking. There's just not a lot of room left.
Sure. That curb cut would be where that drive is now. So the public drive would go away, and we would replace that with a private curb cut driveway into the facility. And then you could put a gate across that entrance there off your curb cut, and that so you have an end of that median will allow you a left turn into that driveway at that point. The initial thought for trash was kind of on the south side there, at that radius by your detention pond, to keep it away from the neighborhood as possible. That was the initial thought. If it needs to go, again, it was mentioned to go away from that public or private drive, it could be moved to the north end to where your trash truck would just pull straight into it through the parking lot. It'd be closer to the building that way, but it would also be closer to the houses as well. So it's kind of a give and take.
Yeah.
You want it closer to the houses, closer to the street.
Okay.
It's kind of
So the private drive that you would convert to just a curb cut entrance, that's on your property?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
That's good. The last thing I'll add is, especially with the number of units, I know it's a tight site, but one big building is going to be really unattractive for a lot of different reasons. And it's going to be difficult to add windows to the units. So
Sure.
I would really look at, if this is approved, breaking down the building into some smaller pieces.
We could do it 2 separate ones possibly and just do them, separate in the middle. Again, that building is drawn larger than it probably needs to be for now, just as a placeholder. We weren't sure on yet the size of the building and the shape, but it could be broken up into 2 possible buildings and make it look much nicer if that's a desire.
Yep.
Thanks.
Any more questions? Any questions from our board members?
No,
For the
I
applicant? Go
did
ahead.
want to say, I'm very familiar with this piece of property, with this site. I actually had it under contract about 6-7 years ago. A little bit ahead of my time, but I think you've put together here something that's pretty decent, not a bad design. So definitely with the amount of square feet that you're working with, that lot size, yeah, I like it.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else? Okay. Hearing no more remarks, we're going to close the public portion of this meeting. Mr. Gill.
Move to approve item number MJR 2024-049CO.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any discussion? Members, is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, I assume we're ready to vote. Are we going to do it all together or individually?
But Madam Chair, I
think Gerald has something to say.
I was going to mention that there were some suggested condition amendments that the applicant and the opposition had discussed. So if you wanted to adopt those, we have those that you could discuss whether or not to keep the conditions that we have presented or adopt the amendments that were discussed.
That's exactly what I was about to discuss. Can we include those amendments that the neighborhood wanted? And I assume that the developer has agreed to.
Correct, and I can mention those. So to to condition number 6, which discussed the maximum building height of 45 feet. That would be changed to a maximum of 2 stories. And then to condition number 7, which we were requiring the drive to be a connected drive, which we always encourage. And however, I know the opposition and the applicant had discussed and agreed to not having that connection. And so that would be changed to only 1 curb cut is permitted to Highland, Appling Road. Sorry, I'm trying to read Mr. Saliba's writing. It says Appling. And I think that we would also add a condition that, or we would add to that, there would be no connection to, for those streets. So those were the 2 items that were discussed.
For the building height, can we say 2 stories and 35 feet maximum?
Yes.
We
I
can't,
also heard.
we can't, okay, I'm sorry, I thought.
No problem. I also heard one of the presenters in the opposition request a commercial grade fence. Is that a part of the?
I don't believe, so that wasn't part of what the applicant mentioned. If that's something that the board would like to consider, you could discuss it, and if we needed to open it back up to the applicant or opposition to discuss, we could do that.
I would like to hear that to see if we could get that part worked out as well.
Okay, that means we need to reopen the public part of our meeting. Do we have a vote? To vote?
I move we open the public.
Okay, we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye, that we move, that we open, we got to reopen the public
There was one
portion.
other condition that would.
I know, before you talk, we got to reopen this, okay? We voted to reopen the public portion of the meeting. Now, do you have any questions of anybody?
Simply the commercial grade fence. I want to hear from, I guess, we've heard from the opposition requesting that. So for the developer, can you accommodate that?
Sure. So on the fence, we do intend to put a fence on the property. I assume the eastern side would need to be a privacy fence to try and provide the neighborhood some privacy as well. The church is also to our south. They've also asked for a fence. So I would suggest maybe a privacy fence there as well, along both the south and the east side. We would have an ornamental fence likely along Appling Road to get back to the building, so that's not, so we keep it secured. But I'd say a privacy fence would be okay for us along the east and the south sides, and then an ornamental iron fence along the Appling Road frontage to provide, a better look to it, if that's okay with everyone.
Okay, we'd like to hear from the gentleman would somebody like to hear from the gentleman from the opposition?
Yes.
Okay, Mr.
The one other thing that I mentioned in my presentation was that we would want, if this is to be approved, that prior to or in the course of the administrative review of the final plan, that it be submitted to the abutting landowners for their review and comment.
Everybody amenable to that amendment, or is that possible, Mr. Ragsdale?
We typically, it's part of the public record when they submit for a final plat review, so we typically would not get into situations where we require a submittal to a private homeowners association for review and approval. It's this board's review and approval that you have the authority to review and approve, and then we do with the final plat. They can obviously work with the applicants through that process, but we generally do not have that as a condition.
Okay, is that okay? Everybody amenable to the amendments as presented? Mr. McClendon, you have something to say? Go ahead. Okay. Do we need to repeat that motion as amended? After I close the public portion of this meeting?
I think we would need a motion to adopt as amended.
Okay.
Okay, well, let me close the public portion of the meeting again. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Gill.
Motion to approve MJR 2024-049CO as amended.
Okay, it has been moved. We have a second. Is there any further discussion? Mr. McLennan, you are bursting with energy down there. Is there any further discussion?
I was just from the workout this morning, that's all, that's the energy, no.
I would like to say one thing to the neighbors. I don't think anybody on this board loves seeing multifamily on this site with as much single families around it, but it's an already approved use within the PD. So we're trying to listen to the neighborhood and work with this applicant who I think has been very open to his edits and to the neighborhood. So we appreciate the applicant and the neighborhood for coming down here. Just wanted to explain that.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion?
Well said.
Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, I assume we're ready to vote. Is it going to be individual or is it going to be all together?
I can do that individual if you'd like. Mr. Thomas?
Yeah.
Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
Mr. Gill?
Yes.
Mr. Tolles?
Yes.
Ms. Wilbanks?
Yes.
Mr. Winter?
Yes.
Vice Chair Lyles Wallace?
Yes.
And Chair Sharp?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. Gill.
Item number 5, S 2024-041, University 2-lot residential major subdivision located at 4014 Grandview Avenue.
Madam Chair, David Wade, 6410 Poplar Avenue. I represent the concerned citizens. And meeting with Mr. Whitehead, we have agreed that this matter can be held till the February meeting.
Okay.
Because we're highly hopeful and believe we can strike a deal.
Wonderful.
Confirmed.
Yeah, if we could just, so you are in agreement, Mr. Whitehead?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, do we need to vote on the whole?
Item, you want me to call the next item?
Just a minute. Mr. Ragsdale, do we need to vote on that whole?
Yes, Madam Chair, I would prefer that.
Okay. Just a minute. Okay.
We'll vote on the whole. Go ahead, you can make it.
Okay.
Let me do a motion.
I need a motion to vote on the whole for number 5.
Motion to hold item number 5, S 2024-041.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
Second.
Hearing none. Any discussion? Hearing none, I assume we're ready to vote on the whole. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Wade.
Thank you. Item number 7, MJR 2024-053, East, correspondence to PD 2018-044, major modification to allow a pole sign with a greater height and square footage located at 3610 Centennial Drive.
Okay, is the applicant present? If so, would you come up and give us your name, address, and then we'll hear it?
Christine Donhart, The Reeves Firm, 6800 Suite 101.
Thank you. Okay, it's been rejected, so we will hear it.
Thank you. This is Nabanita Anira with Division of Planning and Development, presenting the case number MJR 2024-053, located at 3610 Centennial Drive. This is a major modification request to allow a pole sign in Winchester Hacks Cross PD. The original PD was approved in 1998, and the subject property is located in area A4 of the PD, approximately 320 feet north of Winchester Road. The zoning map and the land use map is on your screen. In 2019, the Land Use Control Board approved auto body repair use in area A. After that, in 2021, Enterprise Rent-A-Car was approved on the north of the subject property, and in 2022, the vehicle car wash establishment was approved on the subject property. These are the view of the subject property from Centennial Drive and Winchester Road. The applicant is requesting to have a 15-foot high pole sign with a sign face of 35 square feet on the southwest corner of the subject property. The staff is recommending rejection. The outline plan condition states that in Area A, all detached signs shall be monument style. The intent is to be consistent in overall PD that prohibits pole sign. All existing detached signs in Area A are monument style except for the Enterprise Rent-A-Car, which is just north of the subject property. The approved final plat shows the approximate location of ground sign. However, during the site plan approval process, the staff inadvertently added a sign condition for the enterprise site, giving them the right to be a pole sign. The applicant wants the similar sign condition to be applicable to their site. The car wash and enterprise rent-a-car are located in the only place in the PD that abuts single-family homes. Sign height and sign size controls here are important to minimize the impact on these abutting home. Staff recommend rejection. However, if approved, staff recommends the site conditions. This is the end of staff's presentation. Happy to answer any question.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, hearing none, we're ready for the applicant to come up and state your case.
Hey, I have a very short presentation that will show that this request is reasonable and within context. All right, if you could go to the first slide, please. Like she said, this Red Star is where our site is. And JCPenney's and Dick's Sporting Goods, this whole thing in the 90s, PD was supposed to be office. But obviously, over time, it changed to retail. Next slide, please. In 2022, my client applied for a use change to allow the car wash. It is built, they're nearing completion, and currently the sign allowed would be an office use sign, which is ground mounted with a max height of 16 feet tall. Next slide, please. As you can see from this drawing, the height of the building is 35, and the sign we're requesting is 15 feet tall, so it's 1 foot shorter than what is allowed. We would like it, the CMU2 district, in accordance with CMU2, which would be on a pole. Next slide, please. And they've done right by the neighbors. The neighbors had asked for a taller fence in the back with landscaping, and they did that, and no one objected to that project, and I don't believe there's anyone here to object to this one. Next slide, please. As you can see from this picture, if they had a 15-foot tall pole sign, it would not be unreasonable in size or style, just like this one is not. And next slide, please. And having a pole sign is essential for my client to have success and visibility at his location because it's off the main road and it is in keeping with adjacent businesses. Thank you.
Do we have any questions of the applicant at this time? Is there any opposition? I didn't ask that question. No opposition. Okay. Any questions of the applicant?
No. I have one for
Okay,
OPD.
go ahead.
So, given that Enterprise does have one, can I hear the logic behind why this one, what's the difference? And maybe you said it and I just didn't hear it. I apologize for that.
I'm going to speak to that.
Okay.
Chip Saliba with the Division of Planning and Development. What happened with Enterprise was this. When they came through site plan review at the Land Use Control Board, specific conditions were assigned to their site. And those conditions allowed for what's called, I believe, CMU2 signage, which allowed a pole sign, and as they did. They followed through and they built a pole sign. So that's how that sign got there. In hindsight, that was a misstep on our part. We should have not allowed that. And I'm fessing up to you. So we were simply trying to continue our successful pattern throughout this entire plan development for decades now of not having pole signs. And that's our primary objection to it. Sure, we acknowledge that Enterprise has a right to that sign that they have, and nothing really we can do about it. But we just didn't want to get a pattern of pole signs started out there. In reality, I believe this is probably the last area of the plan development that's left to be developed. So take that if you will, but there's the reason there.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I have to. Why do you guys want a taller sign?
We're actually asking for 1 foot shorter,
Oh, 1 foot shorter. Okay, you want to go down.
but, you know, when they measure the ground-mounted sign, they include the base. So it's the same square feet, it would just be higher up. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Go down to come up. I see. Okay. You said it.
It's a monument sign, or they're asking for a pole sign as opposed to a monument sign.
Anyone else?
Is this going to bring you guys more business?
we hope so. You know, branding's important. So I'm sure there's studies done on this.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I would like to ask a question. You mentioned visibility as an issue, but the building, as you pointed out in your presentation, is 35 feet tall, and you've got some pretty garish red painted apparatus things out in front of it. What is the problem with visibility with those things already in place?
Well, we just think it would be a little bit further toward if you're driving by and you're looking down, you're glancing, you'll see the red building and the sign next to it. That's
right,
the hope.
so you'll see the building, you'll see the red equipment, but you still need a taller sign or a bigger sign.
Yes, my client would like a sign that you can see on a 15-foot pole.
I didn't even know this was back there, to be honest with you. I mean, not that it's bad or anything, but
would a sign have helped? Would a bigger sign have helped?
I don't think so. I don't go over there much. I don't travel over
just
there.
wondering.
To go get a car from over there, but I mean, I hadn't been directed there.
Well, you might need a car wash, so keep in mind.
Okay, any further discussion?
Can I mention one other thing?
Okay.
Slide up right there. That would go back to those proposed conditions. Oh, well, right there. Okay. So that would take care of what Christine wants, except I wanted to ask her about condition 2, because we put that in there because currently I believe they have the right to put an attached sign on the east side of the building, and that's facing the neighbors. And we're saying, hey, if we're going to have your detached pole sign, can you acquiesce and not put a sign on that east side of the building? Quite frankly, it doesn't make sense to me. Once you're in the site and you're to the back of the building, don't you know you're there? Why do you need a sign that faces the neighborhood? So that's what condition number 2 was meant to address.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, here you go.
And so my question, have they agreed to that?
That's what I'm trying to get at now.
Okay.
Yeah, that looks like you just put that in there recently. Yeah, sure, we'll agree. We'll acquiesce and give up our sign that faces the back in exchange for a pole sign.
Yeah, if it's approved.
If it's approved.
Yeah, I have one question. Chip, you said this is the last development. Does that mean that this would be the last pole sign that would be put in that PD?
I hope so.
Okay.
But if any other site were redeveloped, then that same question. Could,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. You set a precedence. If you have, what if you change your uses or something? Could you request a pole sign? Yeah.
Most certainly, yeah, anybody can request one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I would think. Okay, thank you.
If just a quick, if they did a ground-mounted sign with brick, is that considered different in the UDC versus a pole sign? Those are two very different types of signs.
correct. That's what's allowed right now is the monument style.
As a
sign.
monument style sign.
Right. And so that's what is right now by right they can do. And so what they're requesting is the pole sign.
It's the pole
which is
sign, right.
Not allowed.
Is this a locally owned and operated, or are these all nationally?
Yeah, no, it is local. My client has a few other spots, and he's building new ones also. He has C-stores and car washes.
Gotcha.
So I want to go back and ask the question again about the height. You're asking for a 15-foot pole sign as opposed to a 16-foot monument sign. What's the difference?
Well, if you had a 16-foot monument sign, it would be 16 feet tall and about 2 feet wide.
So
Your square foot still has to be the same. So
Sign
your
area, okay.
It would be real small, but tall.
You won't have the decorative base or anything, so it's cheaper, I'm assuming.
Well, and and I think, Christian, you had mentioned the actual base and those type things don't count in the square footage. So it's the way it's designed and developed. So,
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at is it's a lesser quality style and design.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, are we considering putting an amendment in there? No? Yes. Okay, so would you read the amendment before we read before I close the public portion and we?
well, I think that you need to close, go ahead and close it, and then you guys can discuss whether or not to, if you're wanting to add any conditions if approved, and then you can vote on it.
Okay, well, I'm going to close the public portion of this meeting, and we are going to discuss after we have a motion and a second. We're going to have a discussion now.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
And Madam Chairman, I move that we add the two site conditions where she gets her pole sign, but there's nothing on the east building elevation.
If approved.
If approved.
Okay, motion to approve item number 7, MJR 2024-053.
As amended.
I'm sorry, as amended.
Second.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I'll just add, I think it's really unattractive. It just sets a bad precedent. It's not necessary. They already have a ton of identifying features on the building. It's really ugly.
I agree with you, Mr. Winter.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, are we ready to vote? On as amended, what you just said?
We're ready to vote.
Okay. Individual?
Yes. Mr. Gill?
No.
Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Winter? Mr. Tolles?
Yes.
Ms. Wilbanks?
Yes.
Vice Chair Lyles Wallace?
No.
And Chair Sharp?
No.
We are tied, so the motion fails.
I didn't hear you. What did you say?
Motion fails.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Gill?
Item number 13, 2024-009, Southeast rezoning of approximately 22.96 acres from R8 to CMU3 located at 0 Mount Moriah.
Okay, is the applicant present? You can introduce yourself, give us your name and address, and then we'll hear the case.
And Madam Chair, the applicant did contact Ms. Christian just before the meeting and said he may not make it, so I do not believe he is here. And so if that's the case, then this would need to be a hold, and we can vote on a hold for the case.
Okay, we're gonna hold or we're gonna wait? Gonna hold?
Hold, yes.
Okay. Mr. Gill. Next case.
No, we need to vote on the hold, don't we?
Pardon?
Don't we need to vote on the hold?
Okay, go ahead.
Motion to hold item number 13, Z 2024-009.
Okay, any further discussion on that hold on item number 13? Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Item number 14, Z 2024-011, CO, unincorporated Shelby County, rezoning of approximately 8 acres from CA to CMU3, located at 10827 US Highway 64.
Okay, is the applicant present? If you'd come up and give us your name and address, and we'll hear it, and then we'll hear your explanation.
Okay, David Bray with the Bray Firm, 2950 Stage Plaza North.
Thank you. Is there any opposition to number 14? Okay, we'll go ahead and hear the case.
Alexis Longstreet with the DPD, presenting on case C 2024-011, located at 10827 US Highway 64. This is a rezoning from CA to Commercial Mixed Use 3. This property is located in unincorporated Shelby County. The current property is zoned conservation agriculture and surrounded by similar zoning, and as well as vacant forest-like properties that are being used in some sort of capacity of either single-family residential, institutional, commercial. And I will mention that the neighboring property owners to the east, their properties are located within a PD that permits their use. Their commercial use, which you can kind of see on the edge here, it is still along the lines of an agricultural use in which they extract wood, sell it, and things like that. Here are some site photos. The current property is currently vacant, except for I believe that there's a home at the front of the property. If you all can look here, they are proposing to rezone. They own the two neighboring property, two adjacent property owners. Sorry, let me start over. They own the two neighboring parcels, and they are wanting to rezone a portion of both, which for a total of 8 acres from the CA to CMU3. Their proposed use for this is to allow essential limited outdoor storage, which is a permitted use within the CMU3 zoning district. But based on the analysis from the Office of Sustainability and Resilience, both of these properties are encompassed in 3 different zones that designate the land as environmentally sensitive. And so when you look into the portion that they are proposing to rezoning, as stated also in the conclusions by staff in the analysis, is that there will be creating a piecemeal. So it'll be CMU3 zoning only in the center, and then the remaining of their property would still remain CA zoned. And that is honestly the basis of the rejection from staff.
Okay, do we have any?
That concludes my presentation.
Okay. Do we have any questions of staff at this time? Okay, hearing none, we're ready for your presentation.
Thank you. Again, David Bray with the Bray Firm. I want to point out a couple of things, and the staff report's a little bit confusing where it deals with the Zone 1, Zone 2, 3, 4, based on the Office of Resiliency. So I would take you to page 16 and note that they actually cleaned it up on page 16 and say that the area requesting to be rezoned is only in Zone 1. None of this is in Zones 3 or 4, which are the more ecologically sensitive. We purposely have this drawn the way it is because of the concerns in the staff report. CMU3 allows a lot of different uses. Well, as you guys know, unincorporated Shelby County does not have access to sewer, so we're sort of limited on uses anyway. But with a 300-foot stretch that's only 50 feet wide, it's not going to be attractive for a Dollar General to come in here and buy this piece of property. They're not going to locate themselves 400 feet off the road. It really can only be used as the applicants want to use this. And I'll let them speak to what they envision on this. But yeah, it is outdoor storage, RVs, boats, things like that. A high-end use, high-end vehicles in this. They want a nice one, not an inexpensive one, not someplace where somebody parks a boat that they just don't want to park at their house anymore and they're not using. We're talking about nice vehicles that would be parked back there. But you wouldn't see it from the road. It's 300 feet off, and if you go back to the aerial view, you see that this portion of the lot's heavily treed. So you'd have a narrow driveway coming in off of 64 for 300 feet, and then you would expand out into a parking area where these vehicles would be parked. Some of them would have covered parking, but we're not talking about, a typical mini storage type thing. We're talking about parking. I looked this morning just to double check the average daily traffic on Highway 64 through this stretch, 26,000 vehicles per day. That's according to TDOT. If we fully develop the 8 acres into parking spaces, we could possibly park 300 vehicles back here. If you got really, really generous and said 30% of those would move on any particular weekend, that's 90 vehicles moving on a weekend, maybe one every 15 minutes added to 64. The industry standard is actually on a parking facility like this that 5% move in a weekend. 15 vehicles per weekend, we're talking about less than 1 an hour. We're not going to impact Highway 64. This is compatible with those uses. As I've stated, there's no sewer out there. We can't do most things that would be allowed in CMU3. So we have particularly configured this to match up. The Hearns are here, they own the property. They intend to keep the property. There was something said, there's not a house on the property, it's a barn. It's a really nice barn. And I'll let them speak to that and what they use the property for and why they want to preserve the rest of it. So let them come up here and then I'll be happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Give us your name and address.
James Hearn, 9756 Greenspruce. We use that property really as an extension of our house. We have horses over there every day. We went over there this morning and fed horses before we came here. We go every day. Every weekend, our grandkids are there riding, horses are riding. We don't want to change, but just a little portion of that property to, help with purchasing of property and all that kind of stuff. But we're never gonna want to make a big facility over there. I don't want that. As a matter of fact, it's in my will that property can never be sold because of them horses. So it's part of our yard, really. We spend a lot of time there. So that's the big deal with it. Tina?
Yeah, I would just add that my husband has purposely kept the trees around the front of the property and all around this area so that it's not seen and it's not visible. And we want to keep it as private as we can from our property, so we intend for it to be upscale. We intend to have a nice privacy fence. So that's how we envision it.
We need your name and address as well.
Tina Hearn, 9756 Green Spruce Drive.
Thank you.
Would it be covered or uncovered parking?
Both.
Any questions by the board?
I guess, looking at the property, do you guys think this is the highest and best use for the property as well?
Well, we don't want to change what we personally use it for.
Sure.
Because it is very important to us because we have horses over there and it's so, I could never replace, because we live in Lakeland on the lake over there, I could never get a place in the country that close to where we live and have our horses and everything. So I could never change. It's 6 minutes. I can get in my truck and go and be there at the barn where the horses are in like 6 minutes.
Yeah, it's very quiet back there.
It's like once we get back
country.
to the barn, it's like being in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
So we're not changing that. We ride horses all in the back, and none of that is. We can't replace it. That place
is so. Getting this zoning, is this just to kind of, all right, hey, we got all of this portion, we can bring in some extra cash?
Basically,
yeah. I understand.
But I will say, I don't want a big facility. I want a small, expensive facility, to be quite frank with you.
Yeah.
I don't want I got a job, I don't need a lot of extra work, honestly.
Sure, yeah, I understand.
That's it.
Yeah, I understand, I get that. Okay.
Any further questions before I close the public portion of this meeting? Any further questions? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to close the public portion of the meeting, and we're going to read the motion.
Motion to approve item number 14Z 2024-011 CO.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion amongst our board members? Any discussion?
Is there anything in the restrictions as far as the zoning goes?
With the rezoning, it's a straight rezoning, so you can't add any conditions or anything.
Okay.
All right, any further discussion? I assume we're ready to vote. Will that be in unison or one at a time?
I can do individual. Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Gill?
Yes.
Mr. McKenna? Mr. Tolles?
Yes.
Ms. Wilbanks?
Yes.
Mr. Winter?
Yes.
Vice Chair Lyles Wallace?
Yes.
Chair Sharp?
Yes,
Motion carries.
motion carries. Thank you. Is there any other business?